Hi everybody, good day and welcome to episode 35 of my YouTube video series on real estate investment. And today we're going to talk about asset progression model in Singapore. Now, some of you may have heard of this before. A number of agents in Singapore do talk about this topic where basically the idea is to sell your HDB and use the proceeds to buy two private property. And this is through that you will build wealth for yourself and for your family through property ownership in Singapore. So for those of you who are not familiar with this topic came about because I met a friend, a client of mine last week, and it came through my mind that actually a lot of people in Singapore may not be aware that this can be done or that this is actually something that is possible within Singapore. So I decided to do this video today to go through the high level bones or the high level idea of how this works and see whether it applies to you. It may apply to your case, and if it does, you should really get yourself assessed to see whether it can be done, because many people in Singapore have definitely made a pot of gold, a few $100,000 Singapore dollars in their property assets, in their bank accounts through this process. And I think let me try and educate the public here through this video today. So as per usual, let us start with a introduction of myself.
Director of Outbound Marketing at Ryan.
Still in China, Malaysia. So my name is Ryan. What's that, Ryan?
6,000 incoming supply in Johor. This is
I'm writing. Thank you for attending today's presentation on Iskandar, Malaysia.
So my name is Ryan Khoo. I'm a Malaysian. I'm a Singapore PR. I've been based in Singapore for more than 10 years, since 2009. I'm a property investor first. I have bought and sold many properties across Singapore, Malaysia, even the US. I have done lots and lots of property transactions. I consider myself fairly experienced in this topic, especially when it comes to retail investors and retail investing. I've written articles for the Singapore media, the Malaysian media with regards to Malaysian property, Singapore property. I was featured on the HProp Singapore, Property Guru, and many other media across Singapore and Malaysia over the years. My pet topic is Iskandar, Malaysia. You will see me talk about Iskandar, Malaysia from time to time. But today we're going to talk about Singapore and the Singapore asset progression model. So a bit of disclaimer, this presentation, this video is just for information purposes. Do get yourself properly assessed before you make any decisions for your own financial situation, as everybody's situation is different. Okay, so what is asset progression? Okay, you may hear similar terms to it. Some people call it sell two buy one. Sorry, sell one buy two, not sell two buy one, sell one buy two, right? There are some wealth accumulation model through property Singapore. I mean, different people call it different names. I think the most common one is asset progression. And I said, you will see property agents in Singapore who have spoken to you about this topic. So basically the idea, yeah, is to build wealth progressively through upgrading your Singapore property. Okay, so how does this work? So normally, a typical couple in Singapore or typical person in Singapore goes through the process of buying a BTO, right? Let's not talk about I inherit money from my father, mother, or I'm born rich, that kind of scenario. We use the typical, most common middle class scenario in Singapore, which I go to NS, I come out from NS, I go to university, I get myself a job, right? Together, me and my fiance, we apply for a BTO, right? A build to order HDB, which is the most common, I think, scenario in the Singapore context today. And basically, as a married couple, I have to wait typically nowadays anywhere from 3 to 5 years. It could be, because of COVID, some cases are longer, but anywhere from 3 to 5 years for the HDB BTO to be completed. And upon completion, I move into the HDB. I live there for 5 years, right? Because there is a minimum occupation period of 5 years for HDB in Singapore, right? After I lived in this HDB for 5 years, right, I then sell this HDB to make some money, okay? And I use this money to then buy two private properties in separate names. So my wife, one name, myself, also one name. So I buy one property under my name, my wife buy one property under her name. This is the idea of asset progression, because for HDB, for BTO, definitely, normally you have to buy in two names, which is husband, wife, which is the fiancé model, right? But when you want to buy private property, you split away your names. So one name, buy one property each, private property, okay? So this is the model, right? And typically this whole process, which I first start off here, right? The BTO putting your BTO to MOP, right, can be anywhere from 7 to 10 years, right? I guess it all depends a bit on the construction period. And you may not exactly sell 5 years upon MOP, right? Although which is quite common. So anywhere from 7 to 10 years. So I mean, by the time you sell your MOP, typically you are at least 35 years of age, sometimes older, right? 35 to 40, I think that's quite a common age that you are. So if you are today 35 to 40, right, and you just realize your HDB has completed your MOP, right? This is one thing you can consider, or that you may be actually fall into the category of people who can do the asset progression model. But like I said, a lot of people in Singapore actually fall under this model, right? If you have this, because this is the most common model, right? Fiance, get married, go apply BTO, right? Very common. Right? Who has not heard of this before, right? And who doesn't? This is the standard, right? Way to do it, right? Which in Singapore today for young people, right? So let's go through a case study, right? That will help you understand this. Okay, so yeah, so and of course the two private property that you buy, right? One is to stay, right? Because after you sell a HDB, you need somewhere to stay. Okay, so you buy one resale to stay, and the second property will be for investment. Can be under husband or wife name, right? Whichever, right? Depends, right? And the second property under the second spouse, right? It's an investment property, be it for rental, which is typically you buy a resale one, or capital gain, which you buy a new launch. Okay, so let's use a case study. Okay, so this case study, I'm going to use Punggol. Okay, why Punggol? Because Punggol is again something very common. If you're within 35 to 40 years old today, I mean, high chances are that you got a BTO in Punggol, right? Okay, not necessarily. Okay, Punggol was quite hot those days. So you got a BTO in Punggol, 4-room flat, right? And those days I checked the data. The median 4-room flat in Punggol those days was 317,000 median price. So you would have bought a BTO, you got the ticket and bought a 4-room flat for 317,000. So we assume here is fiance scheme. You found your wife or your husband, you apply together as a BTO, you got married, right? And we assume in this case again, for simplicity of this calculation, right? I assume you took 0 grants, and I assume you took CPF. Okay, in reality, that's not common, right? In reality, many people use their CPF, all right? But I mean, for simplicity of the math here, because I don't want to complicate the math, because if I use CPF for that, then this presentation will be quite complicated. So I just assume for simplicity, right? No CPF and no grant. Okay, but although you may get CPF or grant, right? Okay, that also, we assume here 80% loan, right? With a mortgage of those days, the mortgage would have been about 1.2% for 30 years. Of course, now it's a bit higher, but again, for the purposes of this presentation, it's 1.2, which was the rate for most of the period from 2014 until today. Okay, and of course, Punggol, Singapore government did very well. Punggol did very well, right? And Punggol prices went up, right? Over the 2014 until today period. Okay, now another reason why I'm not talking about CPF so much is because if you look at just a slide on CPF. If you look at CPF, right, when you sell a HDB, when you sell your BTO, if you use CPF, you have to refund the CPF to your CPF account, and you have to refund not only the principal but also refund with the CPF interest. Okay, then you say, hey Ryan, then how does that factor into your calculation? But let's not worry about that first, because the idea is, even though you refund money to your CPF, you're going to take out the same CPF money again to buy your private property. So I don't factor it in, because the CPF you used to buy BTO, then later you pay back when you sell your BTO. Okay, you sell when you sell the BTO, you pay back with interest. But then when you're going to buy a private, you're going to take it out again. Okay, so I assume it's a net zero effect, all right? Like we assume it's a net zero effect. It may not necessarily exactly be net zero effect, but something like that. Okay, so let's go back to the main story. So after 4 years construction, we assume a 4-year construction period and a 5-year MOP. So in this case, it's 9 years. And depending on when you got married or when you BTO, you'll be around 35 years old or a bit older. And then you sell this HDB in the year 2022, last year, okay, where the median price of a HDB in Punggol was 575. Okay, so your property appreciated from 317 to 575 over this 9-year, roughly 9-year period. Okay, then the other thing is your loan would have been paid down to about 217. Okay, so when you sell your HDB and you pay down your loan, your gross proceed, just don't call it net, your gross profit is actually $358,000. So you have this $358,000 in your hand, your gross gains. Okay, again, I didn't factor in agent fee and things like that, but agent fee is only 2%, so let's not overthink this, over design this thing, right? Gross proceed in your hand, roughly $350,000. Okay, and yeah, so, wow, I make money, right? Capital gain, right? You're very happy, right? Wow, Ryan, I make 350,000, I'm very happy. Stay in the HDB. But now the problem is what? You just sold the HDB, where you gonna stay, right? You sold the HDB, you should have been living there for the past 5 years, and you got no house. So what do you do now, right? So with the 350,000, you now look to buy a house. But yeah, and talking about CPF just now, as I mentioned, right? This is a question which I screenshot from the CPF page, right? After I sold my property, can I use my refunded CPF saving to buy next property, right? Can. So the answer basically is can. So like what I said earlier, I'm not factoring CPF into this presentation because it will just have a lot of numbers to count and then it may confuse you, right? But the idea is any CPF, if you sell a HDB, refund the CPF with interest, you can still take out the CPF again to buy your private property. So let's not over design, we assume it's net neutral. Okay. So after 10 years, right, more or less 10 years of working, right, from your BTO days, you live in this Punggol 4-room flat for 5 years, right, and after 10 years, I assume your income is like this. Spouse income 10,000 for spouse A, spouse B income 7,000, okay? It could be higher, it could be lower, but I mean, looking at Singapore household income today is roughly, I think what the day I saw, I think the top 30% is 20,000, right? So I think 10 and 7 is not too far off. I think a lot of people are within this category. Definitely, a lot of people are within this category where spouse A, spouse B have a rough income as follows. Okay, if it's lower if it's lower, don't fret. I mean, lower is fine. I mean, it doesn't lower affects your what property can buy a little bit, but doesn't matter. Like I said, in this example, I'm using 10 and 7, which I believe a lot of people are in this category, right? Singapore income growth has been pretty decent over the years. Okay, so now the question is, as per the plan, spouse A going to buy one private ma. Spouse B also going to buy one private ma. One private to stay, one private as investment. Okay, now I got 350,000. We made the money from selling HDB. Okay, so the plan is we need a new place to stay, right? And we also need another property as an investment. And husband will buy one, wife will buy one. Okay, what you buy depends on the income and what you're more comfortable with. Okay, this is very different from every case is unique. Okay, but yeah, so spouse buy one to stay, another spouse buy one for investment. So the question with income 10,000 and 7,000 after 10 years of working, what kind of property or how much of property can they afford, right? So if you use a spouse A at 10,000 a month, he can afford to buy a property at 1.456 million. Okay, spouse B can buy about 1.07 million. Okay, using the income of 10,000 and 7,000 earlier. Okay, and we assume max loan 30 years and all this. Okay, if you buy private property, you have a minimum cash of 5%, so 72K, right? And there's a stamp duty also, right? So in this total, right, if you add up all the minimum cash plus stamp duty, right, it's still, you still have more than enough to pay for all this, right? You got 358,000, 350,000 gain earlier when you sell HDB. So the HDB gain 50,000 enough to pay all the minimum cash to buy the two private property. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is when you sell HDB, you make that money is enough for you to put the down payment for the two private properties. Okay, so now the question that you must ask is, for 1.456 million, what can I buy lah? Okay, for 1.07 million, what can I buy lah? Okay, this is that's a separate discussion, right, with your agent, right, to see what you can buy in the market based on this quantum. Okay, because you know you can buy up to this high, so you have to scour the market to see what you can buy at this price. So again, one to stay, one as an investment. Okay, actually, if you ask me today at 1/million, right, you can buy a lot of 2-bedroom properties in private condo in Singapore. Maybe the lease is not so fresh. I mean, they could be 80-year lease properties, right? But 1 million actually in Singapore, you can buy a lot of 2-bedroom condo, pretty decent location, right? To stay. Right, you cannot buy HDB because HDB again you need to be joint name, right? You cannot single because you're married, right? But what I'm trying to say, even at 1 million today, there's still a number of resale choices that you can buy to stay, right? And you can use the 1.45 million for investment, or it could be vice versa. If you want a bigger property, use the 1.456 million to buy a 3-bedroom resale, and this 1/million to go and look for some investment property. It doesn't even have to be one investment property, right? In the scenario I'm saying here is you're buying one more private property. Some people take the 1 million, go and buy a play share lah. Some people go and not play share. Some people go take the 1 million, go and buy industrial property lah, buy commercial property, buy overseas. Also can, right? Nothing wrong with that. Okay. But the typical model here, we're staying within Singapore, right? And private condo, right? So let's stick to that. So yeah, and anyhow, stamp duty can also be paid from CPF, right? Which is so actually you don't really need so much cash for down payment for the two private properties anyway. Okay, so this is how the wealth creation is created, right? So you sell the HDB for the gains, use the proceed to buy one private for own stay, normally which will have to be a resale, and one private property for investment. So typically what we try to do today is a new launch, because a lot of new launches in Singapore have experienced good capital gain. So if you buy the right new launch, right, and you wait another 3-4 years for the new launch construction, when you sell that new launch, right, you can make another pot of gold, typically another couple $100,000, right, which you then benefit one more time. You can use to pay down your other property that you stay, or you can simply keep it in the bank, or simply keep the property as well for rental, also can. But the idea is one spouse name for each property. One spouse, you split the name, right? Last time buy HDB had to be two names, the BTO. Then once you go out, you sell HDB, you make money already, you split one name, one wife buy one, husband buy one. Okay. Now in this slide also, you will notice that I'm using a very simple, simplistic scenario. I've not factored in that you may have additional savings, right? You work 10 years, you must have some savings, right? Cannot be you start from zero. Okay. Whether savings in cash or savings in CPF, I have not factored in. Okay. You will likely, in most cases, a lot of these couples have some money in the CPF of savings, right? Which you can then use to either buy a bigger property, or you don't borrow so much, right? From the bank also can, right? So like I said, in this scenario, in a lot of scenarios that we've seen, a lot of these people who do this, they are not limited to 1.45 million. They can actually do around 1.6, 1.7, even up to 2 million is also very common, because they have some savings, they are more cash, and because of that, they can actually buy uh, a bigger property lah. Or even if they don't buy bigger property, they don't have to come out so much cash, they can reduce loan amount. So what I'm trying to say is, and yeah, of course, everything here is median data. There are people who, of course, outlier, high performers, right, who can definitely do better. Even if you're not, your income is below median a little bit, it doesn't mean you cannot do this. You can still do this, but of course, you probably have to go smaller, one bedder, two bedder, right? This kind of studio apartments, this kind of properties that you can buy. But nothing wrong with that, because even in Singapore today, rental is very good. Even if you buy a studio one bedder, you can collect rental $3,000 a month. I think that is still very attractive, right? And a lot of people like to put money in Singapore property, because Singapore property has shown to be very price resilient, and a lot of people have enjoyed capital gains. I think in Singapore, I think 9 out of 10, I don't know what's the actual statistic, but 9 out of 10 of people in Singapore make money, probably more, make money in Singapore real estate. As long as you can hold it over time, I think very few people have actually lost money in Singapore. Okay, especially if you're Singaporean citizen. In these cases, we're also assuming we're also Singapore citizen, right? I didn't use foreigner case. Foreigner case, there's other taxes to consider. But yeah, so this is the plan, right? So if you are not sure, if you like what I've just explained to you in this video, but you are not sure whether it apply to you, right? Do get yourself assessed, right? Find an experienced property agent who understands this well. How will this apply to you? If you're a HDB owner that you stayed for more than 5 years, you've achieved your MOP. You could be an EC owner, you bought an executive condo, right? You've also achieved your MOP of at least 5 years, right? These two category of people are typically the one that are ripe or ready to look at asset progression model. Okay. Of course, not everyone wants to go through it. Some of people may have other financial commitments which are not reflected here, right? But I mean, like I said, if you are in this category, right, HDB, stay more than 5 years, could be BTO, could be resale, doesn't really matter, right? But you clear your MOP. Number two is EC. You've also stayed 5 years or more, right? You can look at yourself to get yourself assessed, right? And of course, on paper, you should have capital gains on your property lah. I mean, if you bought and you lost money for whatever reason, then difficult, right? No point, because you lost money, right? But a lot of people, I believe, have equity, right, or capital gains in your property, in your HDB, or be it your EC, right? And these people are the ones that we're trying to get that are most applicable for this asset progression model. And done right, you can create easily a few $100,000 of wealth for yourself, right, over the next 5 years or so, right? And I think in a very, we can say a quite safe manner, with a lot of historical data to support that this thing will happen, right? And like I said, it's very common in Singapore for people to upgrade their wealth, to build wealth through this today, right? So I hope this video explain how asset progression model is done, how wealth is built through Singapore real estate through the asset progression model. It's a uniquely Singaporean thing, right? It doesn't happen anywhere else in the world. Happens only in Singapore. And Singapore citizens, or maybe if you're a PR, you married Singaporean, are people who are the one that benefit from it. I think in Singapore, it's a great place to make money from property investment. And if you are in this scenario, or you're not sure, do find out an agent or find me, right? I leave my number here and my email. We can no obligation assessment to help you understand whether you can do this or not for you. Okay, like I said, HDB stay more than 5 years, clear MOP, or EC executive condo 5 years or more with some capital gain in your property. How much you have to check, right? And we can do an assessment for you because I factor in your CPF, etc., how much savings or that to see what is possible for your case today. So thank you very much. I hope this video today was useful. And if you have any questions talk about real estate, be it Singapore, Malaysia, or any topic outside of this, feel free to drop me an email, reply my YouTube. Please like, share, subscribe if you find that what we taught you here today was useful. And thank you very much. My name is Ryan Khoo, and I'm signing out.